The stone won't fall until the podcast of the dragon comes to your device. Hey everybody, my name is Morgan. You might know me as the Grey Warder on Twitter and Discord. Welcome to the 25th episode of Podcast of the Dragon. If I had to guess, I'd say Moiraine liked Perrin best of the three ta'veren before she had to go on a weeks-long rand-wrangling adventure with him and deal with all of his sass. Today, we'll bask in the power of Perrin's stubbornness and watch Moiraine slide down the slippery slope from serenity while the weight of his willfulness adds to the colossal shitstorm that's pushing her toward the edge. Throughout the episodes that I've done on the Dragon Reborn, I haven't been shy about taking the book to task for its failings. But whatever weaknesses that it might have, I actually think Book 3 is one of the better books in the series. It's incredibly balanced. It's a whole and satisfying story in and of itself. It's got good expanding world building, it transitions well into the Shadow Rising, so it works as this excellent bridge between the beginning trilogy into the middle part of the series. It does beautiful character development, like impressive, thorough, and believable development of 3 of the 4 main POV characters, and we also get a little bit of non-romantic relationship exploration. RJ uses relationships, and whenever I mention relationships, unless I specifically say otherwise, I'll always be talking about non-romantic ones. He uses relationships to push character growth. He'll give us supportive relationships and contentious relationships, and they're nearly always dynamic, so plenty of times the relationship will start out supportive and become contentious or vice versa. And while supportive relationships are more heartwarming, the contentious relationships are often more interesting, and in The Dragon Reborn we get some really great contentious relationships. I've already looked at Nynaeve and Egwene's relationship in this book, and how Egwene's contrary, quarrelsome attitude with Nynaeve is part of her breaking away and an expression of her trauma. And last episode I talked a bit about Moiraine and Rand, but the nuances of that relationship are honestly better explored later, probably once we get to the point where Moiraine swears to obey Rand. So, the contentious relationship that I like best in The Dragon Reborn is actually the one between Moiraine and Perrin. Each of them uniquely challenges and pushes the other one. And while we can only speculate on how much of the decline in Moraine's composure over the few months that they're chasing after Rand is caused by the conflict that she has with Perrin, we do get to see a good bit of the way that Perrin grows because of how he pushes against Moiraine. Throughout the series, the Emond's Field 5 are exposed to a fuck ton of different Aes Sedai. We meet Aes Sedai who are likable people, Aes Sedai who are utterly detestable, women who are colorful, reserved, unforgettable, all different kinds. And RJ, through point of view and the unreliable narrator, uses his skill with subtext to have all of the Emond's Fielders have their opinions of those Aes Sedai colored by their perceptions of the first Aes Sedai that they knew, at least until they hit the middle of the series and their catalog of known Aes Sedai has grown enough to give them a more accurate idea of the varied sort of people that Tar Valon produces. Egwene, who has the most positive relationship with Moiraine, instinctively trusts all Aes Sedai and gives them the benefit of the doubt. Moiraine is kind to her and treats her as kin. Her actions as she works in the village on winter night and heals people and fights the shadow spawn then and later on indicate a desire to do good and mitigate harm. Egwene's first impression of an Aes Sedai is of someone who works for the light and fights against the Dark One, and so she sees the Tower and the Aes Sedai as a united force against the Shadow, which gives her this naive perception of Aes Sedai as people to admire and trust. Nynaeve hates Moiraine, and she hates her with this kind of black passion, and therefore she loathes all Aes Sedai. They're all evil and scheming in her view, so she goes into the Tower with almost a completely opposite perception from Egwene. Rand mistrusts Moiraine instinctively right away, and that only grows and grows. Eventually, he gets to the point where that changes once she agrees to obey him, but he never trusts another Aes Sedai, not really. And then he's betrayed by them as well, so he'll have them swear fealty to him, and he has to work with them. He doesn't have a choice about that. But his instinctive wariness and mistrust of Moiraine and the discomfort that he felt with her continues on with all of his other interactions with Aes Sedai. Mat always disliked Moiraine. He saves her from the Aelfin and the Eelfin because he likes Tom and because he wouldn't leave anybody to the snakes and foxes. But he dislikes Moiraine and he dislikes all other Aes Sedai, and he wants to be away from them. And that is there from the beginning, which is why his instinct when he's accidentally shouting random thoughts in the land of the Eelfin is immediately to be like, I want to get away from the One Power. I want nothing to do with Aes Sedai. And he also just has this instinct to be insolent with them and tweak their noses because he doesn't appreciate them trying to tell him what to do and interfering with his life. Perrin is sort of different from the others. From the beginning, he wishes that they had no need for Moiraine. He tells Egwene as they get together the morning after Shatter Logoth, I wish we didn't need her, but obviously we do. And trying to imagine Perrin's interactions with Moiraine, like, when she first comes to Emond's Field, I imagine that she gave him his coin and told her that she could use some help around the village, and he's like, yeah, beautiful exotic woman, of course. Though he would be much more measured and possibly even trying to puzzle out why she and Lon are there, because their presence was a mystery to anyone who gave it a moment's thought. And while he is not in the beginning of the series the sophisticated critical thinker that he will grow into, he does a lot of contemplation in the first book. But he's also seen the Myrtle at the point that Lon and Moiraine show up, and considering how contemplative he is, he was probably quite preoccupied with that. And I imagine that it was much easier for Moiraine to convince Perrin to go with her than it was for her to convince Mat and Rand. And I did a Twitter poll on this of who was the easiest one to convince, and 60% of people said Mat, but I don't agree. I think Perrin would have been the most reluctant to leave, and the coin created a bond, and I think she would have had to use that bond to help her to convince Mat to go, but Perrin I think she could have persuaded using only reason. The news that 2 of the 4 targeted attacks were on places related to him, like telling him, yo, your farm was attacked, and then they made it a point to attack the forge also, so they were really after you. Along with the Fade watching him, I think all of that would be enough to convince him because he has good logic and common sense no matter how little he wanted to leave. Perrin takes the Shadowspawn chasing them very seriously, and you never see from him the way that you do from Mat's questioning behavior or Rand's inner narrative that he is as troubled by Moiraine sinking the ferry. And that may just be that RJ wanted us to understand that his feelings were included with Mat's what the fuck, did you sink the ferry? Or Rand's judgmental thoughts, but I don't believe it. Perrin likes to think things through, and I can see him thinking to himself, well, why would she do that? And then thinking, well, so they can't follow us. And then, well, that's someone's hard work, that's a man's trade. Well, they did give him a significant amount of money, and she made sure that everybody got off so that nobody got hurt. And just considering everything and finally deciding that the potential for harm if she didn't sink the ferry was much greater, and while it was a shame to sink it because that'll cause inconvenience and a lot of hard work to rebuild it, Master Hightower was monetarily compensated for it and will actually have a significant amount of money left over even once he builds his new ferry. And so I can see Perrin coming to a place with his logic of seeing like, okay, well, it's not terrific, but it's not the worst thing either, and thinking some kind of weird blacksmithing metaphor like you can't untwist the iron, but you can smelt it to make something better, or, well, I just made that up, whatever. Just not thinking judgy thoughts about her, and understanding why she chose to do what she did, and not being as troubled, and wishing more that they just didn't need Moiraine in the sense of, I wish there weren't Trollocs after us, I wish there weren't Myrtle after us, I want a simple life, I'd like to go back to Emond's Field and keep working as an apprentice blacksmith, and eventually as an actual blacksmith, and not have this bullshit with Trollocs and Myrtle to the point where I actually need an Aes Sedai to help me out, because, you know, who wants that? So I can see him being the most practical of the mistrustful of Aes Sedai Emond's Fielders when it comes to how he felt about Moiraine. He's wary of her, and he's wary of the power and of Aes Sedai in general, but there isn't the fundamental fear or mistrust that Rand has, the burning, grudge-bearing hatred of Nynaeve, or the fundamental revulsion that Mat has. Perrin's feelings, like everything else about him, are much more measured. Perrin is also different in the fact that he has no real defense against Aes Sedai. All of the other Emond's Fielders do. The girls in Rand can all channel. Egwene and Nynaeve can also become part of the institution and gain power through that, so that they not only have a means of fighting through the ability to wield the one power, but Egwene is able to hold her own against them by being their leader and using her political prowess to control them, and Nynaeve takes power away from them with her utter indifference to what being Aes Sedai means and her willingness to flat out tell them the way we do things is stupid and I don't care for it. And when it gets to the point where she goes through her test for the shawl and doesn't stay calm and doesn't do any number of the things that you're supposed to do, and they're all like, yo, you failed, you really shouldn't get the shawl, and she's just kind of like, so? Fine, I really don't give a shit. I'm gonna go help Rand at the last battle, whether or not you give me the shawl, and I can do other shit. I'm married to a Borderland king, I've got lots of stuff that I can do with my life, so you can fucking shove your shawl up your ass, I really don't care. Give it to me or not, but don't tell me that I was in the wrong because of the way that I behaved. Your shit is illogical and stupid and you can suck it. And that is power right there. Power to be utterly indifferent to their system and the way that they do things. Rand is the dragon and fucking terrifies the Aes Sedai. He's incredibly powerful as a channeler. They fear him and his Ta'Viranness, and he's this force of nature moving through the world. A force of nature who quickly grows to be utterly unimpressed by Aes Sedai, and that gives him so much power against them. Mat is insolent and doesn't give a fuck, and he has his medallion so that no one can actually use the one power to touch him with weaves, which gives him a sense of comfort and safety. And yeah, it's not perfect, but just as Rand and the girls all have the one power used against them in different ways throughout the course of the series, and are made to suffer in different ways by Aes Sedai, Mat, too, suffers the occasional indignity at their hands, but he still has some manner of defense against Aes Sedai. Perrin has none of that. He can't channel. He has no political acumen that can bend them in any way. He can't overawe them through the sheer terror of his presence, and he has no protective artifacts. And yet, somehow, he seems to have the greatest power of all when it comes to holding his own against the women of the White Tower. Perrin's power against the Aes Sedai is that he has the power to tell them no. He tells them no in large ways and in small ways. He does it using denial and withholding, refutation and opposition, questioning and doubt and challenge. And he does it by making demands. In the Shadow Rising, he's going to go home to the Two Rivers and find Varen and Alana there, and he's going to confront them. Why are you here? Putting them in a position where they can't just give a soft answer, flat out acknowledging from the get-go, your being here doesn't make any sense, there's something hinky about it, what are you doing here? Calling them out right away and telling them no, in the sense of, no, you don't get to pretend that there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for you to be here. You don't get to pretend that you're not here because of me, Rand, and Mat. No, you don't get to act like it's not odd. I call you out. Why are you here? And that is a way to deny them power and to deny them the right to hide behind the immunity of being Aes Sedai. Later on in Book 6, when he is taking the Cairhienin and the Siswai'amon and Maidens and the Wing Guards after Rand at Dumai's Wells, he eventually is caught up on the road by the 9 Saladar Aes Sedai, who have appropriated Dan of Luin and the 300 Two Rivers Longbowmen, and Karuna Nachiman, the Green Sister, who will after Dumai's Wells become a very sad Wise One's apprentice. All of these Saladar Aes Sedai will end up swearing fealty to Rand, and he sends them to the Wise Ones because he's not happy with them. He said that 6 could come, and they brought 9, and so he's like, you're gonna fuck off and be apprentices and be grateful I don't treat you the same as I do the Aes Sedai from Tar Valon. So Karuna tells Perrin, you can join your soldiers and your Aiel to us, and Perrin doesn't even blink. He's cool as a cucumber, and he tells her, I also have 300 Two Rivers archers that I'm going to bring with me, and you Aes Sedai are welcome to come along if you like. Basically telling her, no, you don't get to keep my men, those are my men, and I'm taking them now. If you want to come along, you can, but if you think for a second that you're the one in charge here, and you're just going to take all my soldiers and my Aiel and expect me to cede my authority to you because you are Aes Sedai, that isn't happening. Being implacable is one of Perrin's great personality traits, and it is so much fun watching him use it against people who expect him to be overawed because he's just a blacksmith who overthinks everything. Yeah, he's got yellow eyes, but he can't channel. There's nothing that makes him really special in most Aes Sedai opinions beyond the fact that he's a lesser Ta'veren that grew up with Rand al'Thor who's got weird eyes. Nobody knows he can talk to wolves, and nobody knows that he's a dreamwalker, so for them, there's nothing else to make him interesting or noteworthy. He's just this quiet one who people take for granted. People always mistake him for someone who will be a pushover, and one of the most enjoyable things about Perrin, even when he's in his most grim states of mind, is his ability to stymie Aes Sedai, and his ability to tell all kinds of people no. And to use some Perrinisms, I don't think he'd have this tool, this power of telling people no, if he had not been able to shape it by pushing back against Moiraine in the Dragon Reborn. Later on in the series, he thinks about Moiraine and thinks of her as a friend, but in Book 3, she's an adversary, and he is itching to fight with her. When it comes to Moiraine, in the Great Hunt she spent about 5 months away from these Ta'veren. After Varen read the dark prophecy that had been written on the dungeon wall in Faldara, after the theft of the horn and the dagger, she needed to go do research in a place where there were no strings attached and no chance that anyone could interfere with her shit. And maybe she was planning to do that anyway, because she did tell Swan when the original plan was, all these sisters are here, we'll heal Mat, he, Rand, and Perrin will take the horn to Ilion with an escort of Shinerans, I'll take care of my shit, and then I'll be down in Ilion. When he's there, I'll be waiting, it'll be fine. So maybe she was already planning on going to Arafel to Vandina Nadalius's house. But whether she was or not, after the horn is stolen, she goes out to their house to use their Google. It says, Vandine shifted some of the books and manuscripts on the table, shaking her head. So many subjects. The Trolloc Wars, the Watchers Over the Waves, the Legend of the Return, 2 treatises on the Horn of Valir, 3 on Dark Prophecy, and light, here's Santhra's book on the Forsaken, nasty that. As nasty as this on Shatter Logoth, and the Prophecies of the Dragon in 3 translations and the original? Moiraine, whatever are you after? Moiraine proceeds to ask Vandine some questions, including, hey, is the horn linked to the dragon beyond the fact that it has to be at Tarman Gaiden? Is there anything else that says that it's linked to the dragon? And is the dragon linked to Toman Het? Because Toman Het is mentioned in the Dark Prophecy that was written on the dungeon wall. So, this interlude chapter in The Great Hunt, chapter 22, is called Watchers, where Moiraine goes and uses Vandina Nadalius's Google. I guess it's more like she uses their Wi-Fi. Anyway, it ends with her being attacked by a warded Drakkar. And she determines, okay, shit, if the Black Aja is this determined to kill me, I've got to get the fuck out of here. If I'm a liability, it's because they don't want me aiding the dragon. And if they don't want me aiding the dragon, I should probably be with him. If I'm that great of a threat, then he needs me. I've got to get to Toman Het, where she arrives too late to do more than gather up the crew and start heading west with the unconscious Rand, taking him towards the Mountains of Mist. And when he wakes up, she shows him the drawing that is the documentation for this verse that Vandine gives to Moiraine as she's trying to answer her question about, does anything link the dragon to Toman Het? And she says, there's a verse in the original that translates literally as 5 ride forth and 4 return. Above the watchers shall he proclaim himself, bannered across the sky in fire. And obviously when Rand sees the picture displaying the second part of that verse about the watchers, he's like, yo, get rid of that before somebody sees it. And Moraine's like, sorry, it's gone viral. It's all over the internet, captioned Dragon versus Baalzamon, so you might as well say that you're the dragon because everybody else is. In the Great Hunt chapter Watchers, Moiraine and Lon have a discussion about Ta'veren. She's kind of asking him, hey, why did you do what you did with Rand, sending him to the Amerlin talking all fancy? And he's like, I don't know, it felt right. And so she says, rather than guiding a chip floating down a stream, I am trying to guide a log through rapids. Every time I push at it, it pushes at me, and the log grows larger the farther we go, yet I must see it through to the end. I think being away from Rand for a few months gave her a chance to intellectualize that. She's had time to gain some distance, and in the meantime, the log has gotten much bigger, the river has gotten much faster, and the rapids have gotten a hell of a lot rougher. And so she comes back into the Ta'veren sphere of influence, and all of a sudden she's facing something that's far more difficult to handle than what she was facing before. And for a control freak like Moiraine, a planner who uses her knowledge and her understanding to prepare for eventualities, she catches up with Rand and Perrin and the Shinerans on Tome Head and goes to take charge of the situation, and it's nothing like what she left behind. It's nothing that she was prepared for, however much that she thought she was. Because Rand is the log in the rapids, it is easy for Moiraine to forget about the other Ta'Viren, who are the branches or detritus that surround him and increase the strength of the whirlpool. It's easy for Moiraine to not pay them a ton of attention, and in the Dragon Reborn, Mat is out of sight, out of mind. He's in Varen's hands, and they have the dagger back, and so the biggest problem child, at least when it comes to poor decision-making, is mostly contained. Perrin is a different matter. He's quiet and polite and doesn't draw attention to himself, and part of that is because he feels especially cautious around Moiraine. He's fearful of the knowledge that she has. She has knowledge that he is not ready for. It says in the Dragon Reborn, at the beginning of Chapter 3, as Perrin's coming back into the regular camp after Rand's channeling event. Moiraine was standing outside her hut, peering up at the crack. He stopped short. She was a slender, dark-haired woman, no taller than his shoulder, and pretty, with the ageless quality of all Aes Sedai who had worked with the One Power for a time. He could not put any age at all to her, with her face too smooth for many years and her dark eyes too wise for youth. Her dress of deep blue silk was disarrayed and dusty, and wisps stuck out in her usually well-ordered hair. A smudge of dust lay across her face. He dropped his eyes. She knew about him. She and Lon alone of those in the camp, and he did not like the knowing in her face when she looked into his eyes. Yellow eyes. Someday perhaps he could bring himself to ask her what she knew. And I said I must know more of it than he did, but this was not the time. There never seemed to be a time. He didn't mean... It was an accident. An accident, she said in a flat voice, then shook her head and vanished back inside the hut. The door banged shut a little loudly. Perrin drew a deep breath and continued on down toward the cook fires. There would be another argument between Rand and the Aes Sedai in the morning, if not tonight. So, it's not like you're getting here that he's fearful that she's going to tell other people. I don't think Perrin fears that. One of his biggest frustrations with Moiraine is the fact that she's so close-mouthed with information. So his fear isn't that she's going to tell other people, it's just that he's not ready for her to tell him. The knowledge itself frightens him. Because The Dragon Reborn is a book where Moiraine is stretched to her limits, we get to see many sides of her. We get to see her angry, stressed, grim, cold, willing to kill. And we get to also see her compassionate and thoughtful and playful. Many of her best qualities are put on display. It's almost like the person that we know is pushed over the course of this book to the point where you don't know what she's going to do because she gets so desperate. And to give us good contrast so that we can really appreciate the slope that she slides down, RJ makes sure to show us instances of her being kind early on in the book. After the Trollocs attack, as she's healing everybody, it says, "Most of the wolves who were hurt made their own way back to the forest," Moiraine said, knuckling her back and stretching, "but I healed those I could find." Perrin gave her a sharp look, yet she seemed to be just making conversation. "Perhaps they came for their own reasons, yet we would likely all be dead without them." Perrin shifted uneasily and dropped his eyes. What you see there is not just the inherent decency of someone who heals animals. She's making sure to tell Perrin, they saved us. They saved us, and I tried to heal them so that at least some of the wounded ones would live, because without them we'd all be dead. And that's great. That shows a considerate side of her. That she is a woman who would do that is the reason that she's someone Perrin later calls a friend. Once we get to Jara, and we see Noam, the wolf brother, Perrin is finally pushed to ask Moiraine what she knows about talking to wolves. Seeing a man who is basically in the state that he fears he will end up in is so terrifying that it finally overcomes Perrin's reticence. Moiraine makes the attempt to heal Noam and can't do it, and so Perrin talks Simeon into letting him go. And then Perrin goes to her room and asks her the questions that have been deeply troubling him this whole time. He knocks on the door, and it says, "I have been expecting you for some time," she said. "I've not spoken about this before because it was obvious you did not want me to. After tonight, though, what do you want to know?" "Is that what I can expect?" he asked, "to end like that?" "Perhaps." He waited for more, but she only put pen and ink away in their small case of polished rosewood and blew on her writing to dry it. "Is that all? Moiraine, don't give me slippery Aes Sedai answers. If you know something, tell me. Please." "I know very little, Perrin. While searching for other answers among the books and manuscripts two friends keep for their researches, I found a copied fragment of a book from the Age of Legends. It spoke of situations like yours. That may be the only copy anywhere in the world, and it did not tell me much." "What did it tell you? Anything at all is more than I know now. Burn me, I've been worrying about Rand going mad, but I never thought I had to worry about myself." "Perrin, even in the Age of Legends they knew little of this. Whoever wrote it seemed uncertain whether it was truth or legend, and I only saw a fragment, remember? She said that some who talked to wolves lost themselves, that what was human was swallowed up by wolf. Some. Whether she meant 1 in 10 or 5 or 9, I do not know. I can shut them out. I don't know how I do it, but I can refuse to listen to them. I can refuse to hear them. Will that help?" "It may." She studied him, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Mostly she wrote of dreams. Dreams can be dangerous for you, Perrin." "You said that once before. What do you mean?" "According to her, wolves live partly in this world and partly in a world of dreams." "A world of dreams?" he said disbelievingly. Moiraine gave him a sharp look. "That is what I said, and that is what she wrote. The way wolves talk to one another, the way they talk to you, is in some way connected to this world of dreams. I do not claim to understand how." She paused, frowning slightly. "From what I have read of Aes Sedai who had the talent called dreaming, dreamers sometimes spoke of encountering wolves in their dreams, even wolves that acted as guides. I fear you must learn to be as careful sleeping as waking if you intend to avoid wolves, if that is what you decide to do." "If that is what I decide? Moiraine, I will not end up like Noam. I won't." She eyed him quizzically, shaking her head slowly. "You speak as if you can make all your own choices, Perrin. You are ta'veren, remember?" He turned his back on her, staring at the night-dark windows, but she continued. "Perhaps knowing what Rand is, knowing how strongly ta'veren he is, I have paid too little attention to the other 2 ta'veren I found with him. 3 ta'veren in the same village, all born within weeks of one another? That is unheard of. Perhaps you and Matt have larger purposes in the pattern than you or I thought." "I do not want any purpose in the pattern," Perrin muttered. "I surely can't have one if I forget I am a man. Will you help me, Moiraine?" It was hard to say that. What if it means her using the one power? Would I rather forget I am a man? Help me keep from losing myself? If I can keep you whole, I will. I promise you that, Perrin. But I will not endanger the struggle against the shadow. You must know that, too. When he turned to look at her, she was regarding him unblinkingly. "And if your struggle means putting me in my grave tomorrow, will you do that, too?" He was icily sure that she would. "What have you not told me?" "Do not presume too far, Perrin," she said coldly. "Do not press me further than I think proper." He hesitated before asking the next question. "Can you do for me what you did for Lon? Can you shield my dreams?" "I already have a warder, Perrin." Her lips quirked almost into a smile. "And one is all I will have. I am of the blue Aja, not the green." "You know what I mean. I don't want to be a warder. Light, bound to an Aes Sedai the rest of my life. That's as bad as the wolves. It would not aid you, Perrin. The shielding is for dreams from the outside. The danger in your dreams is within you." There's great characterization of Moiraine here. We've seen her display compassion both in healing the wolves and towards Simeon. She chose to heal Noam and depend upon Simeon's silence rather than have Lon kill him. But Perrin's assessment is shrewd, too. He looks at her and looks at what she says, and he's like, yeah, your war with the shadow. If you decide that I'm expendable for whatever reason, you'll fucking kill me without even thinking twice about it. He knows that she won't let anything jeopardize her mission, and if people need to die, so be it. Perrin learns about Noam because he asks after Rand. He got told to be quiet, but he's not going to do that because he's over Moiraine and her secrecy, and he's just kind of like, fuck it. I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. I don't give a shit what she says. And so he asks Simeon, hey, have you seen this guy? Red hair, might play the flute? And Simeon's like, yeah, he played the flute for all the weddings, and he slept in this room last night and woke us all yelling in the middle of the night. And he says, I think he's sick. In the head, We will take care of him, Perrin said. That's why we're following him. Which way did he go?" "I knew it," Simeon said, bouncing on his toes. "I knew she could help as soon as I saw you. Which way?" "East, good master. East, like the Dark One himself was on his heels. Do you think she'll help me? Help my brother, that is. Noam's bad sick, and Mother Rune says she can't do anything." Perrin kept his face expressionless and bought a little time to think by propping his bow in the corner and setting his blanket roll and saddlebags on one of the beds. The problem was that thinking did not help much. He looked at Loyal but found no help there. Consternation had the ogre's ears drooping and his long eyebrows hanging down on his cheeks. "What makes you think she can help your brother?" "Stupid question. The right question is, what does he mean to do about it?" "Why, I traveled to Johanna once, good master, and I saw two women like her. I couldn't mistake her after that." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It said they can raise the dead, good master." So Perrin goes to let the grown-ups know that Moiraine's agelessness was noticed and understood, and so he pushes into their room and it says, Moiraine and Lon stood in front of the cold hearth as if they had been discussing something, and the Aes Sedai did not look pleased at being interrupted. The warder's face was as imperturbable as a carving. "Rand's been here, all right," Perrin started off. "That fellow Simeon remembers him." Moiraine hissed through her teeth. "You were told to keep your mouth shut," Lon growled. Perrin squared his feet to face the warder. That was easier than facing Moraine's glare. "How could we find out whether he had been here without asking questions? Tell me that. He left last night, if you were interested, heading east, and he was carrying on about somebody following him, trying to kill him. And they're like, no shit, he was here. The wealth of weddings and wacky white cloaks told us. Some of us don't need to ask obvious fucking questions when following a mega Taviran. Our powers of observation alone can tell us he was here. So we repeat, you need to shut the fuck up." In spite of himself, Perrin hunched his shoulders as if she were delivering real blows. "Well, you had better be glad I opened my mouth this time. Simeon knows your Aes Sedai. He wants you to heal his brother Noam of some sickness. If I hadn't talked to him, he would never have worked up nerve enough to ask, but he might have started talking among his friends." Lon caught Moraine's eye, and for a moment they stared at one another. The warder had the air about him of a wolf about to leap. Finally Moiraine shook her head. "No," she said. "As you wish. It is your decision." Lon sounded as if he thought she had made the wrong one, but the tension left him. Perrin stared at them. "You were thinking of... Simeon couldn't tell anyone if he were dead, could he?" "He will not die by my actions," Moiraine said, "but I cannot and will not promise that it will always be so. We must find Rand, and I will not fail in that. Is that spoken plainly enough for you?" Caught in her gaze, Perrin could make no answer. She nodded as if his silence were answer enough. "Now take me to Simeon." So Moiraine could have gone to help Simeon out of compassion, or because killing him would be unnecessary, and because she believes that it's wrong to kill if at all possible it can be avoided. But I wonder if partly she chose not to have Lon kill him because Perrin has been butting heads with her enough lately that she thinks about it for a second, and is kind of like, I don't think he'll stand still for it. He's made it real clear at this point that he isn't going to defer to her and isn't going to keep silent about things, and so she's thinking, he's coming here and he's like, hey, this guy wants you to heal his brother, and at the point that she and Lon are exchanging glances, she's maybe thinking, okay, if I send Lon to go and kill him, is Perrin going to make a fuss? And making a calculated assessment and deciding, with the way that he's been lately, shake magic 8-ball, all signs point to yes. And so maybe she decided that the best possible outcome would be to go and try to heal Simeon's brother and make an effort. Because looking at her mission, it's like, what is the thing that will most let the mission go on without any chance of it falling apart or being disrupted? And it's possible that she determined, yeah, I think that trying to heal this guy's brother is the only thing that I can be sure will not cause a scene, because I don't think Perrin will keep his mouth shut. And he is Taviran and tied to the dragon, so having Lon kill him too is probably not a good idea. I really don't want to be pushed to that. Especially because there's a possibility that should the pattern will it, Lon might not be able to kill Perrin. Even the best skilled swordsman can lose a fight, sometimes to the wildest of chances. I can't risk that the pattern and Taviran won't make him trip over a rug, and since this other option is honestly more palatable to me anyway, I'd really rather just go heal the guy's fucking brother than have him killed and deal with the inevitable fallout. So, part of Moraine's frustration with Perrin and Rand and everybody else basically is that she has a lot of knowledge and education and she doesn't appreciate being questioned about it. She has no patience for the fact that even when she does give people information, no one is ever satisfied. Before they leave to hunt Rand, she's been trying to explain to them about the dreams of Kalendor that everybody's having and how powerful channelers can affect people's dreams. It says, "There's always something new from you," Perrin growled. "Can't you tell us what to expect once in a while instead of explaining after it happens?" Uno looked as though he was trying to think of a reason to leave. Moiraine gave Perrin a flat look. "You want me to share a lifetime of knowledge with you in a single afternoon? Or even a single year?" Moiraine is a soldier, and when it comes to being a soldier, you have a chain of command, and especially depending on the type of person you are and looking at a more old-fashioned, traditional type of soldiering, information flows one way. The person who is in charge has all the information and the intel, and then they pass down to their underlings what they need to know. And so for her, she's like, "I'm running this show. I owe none of you anything. I'll give you what I think you need to know to be able to do the jobs that you need to do, and beyond that, you don't need anything, and you don't need to be bothering me or questioning me in any way. Everything would work so much better if you would all just shut up and do what I say." And so she's very frustrated, and she's pretty fucking desperate at the point that Rand runs away, because she has literally no recourse to ensure that any of these people obey her, because nobody signed any contracts. So, Moiraine wakes up the morning after the Trollocs attack with a twofold problem. Rand has run away, and before he ran, he, the Mega Ta'veren, gave his Ta'veren BFF a big push and told Perrin, "You don't ever stand up to her. Shove." Perrin wakes up to Lon telling him that Rand is gone, and so he heads to Moraine's hut. Before he gets there, he's stopped by Masema, and Perrin gives Masema a bit of a Ta'veren push. At least it's my opinion that Perrin is central to Masema going down his path toward becoming the prophet, between the wolves coming to fight and what he does here. It says, "You're from his village," Masema said hoarsely. "You must know. Why did the Lord Dragon abandon us? What sin did we commit?" "Sin? What are you talking about? Why ever Rand went, it was nothing you did or didn't do." Masema did not appear satisfied. He kept his grip on Perrin's sleeve, peering into his face as if there were answers there. Icy water began to seep into Perrin's left boot. "Masema," he said carefully, "whatever the Lord Dragon did, it was according to his plan. The Lord Dragon would not abandon us. Or would he? If I were in his place, would I?" Masema nodded slowly. Yes, I see that now. He has gone out alone to spread the word of his coming. We must spread the word too. Yes." He leapt on across the stream, muttering to himself. And then Perrin gets to Moraine's hut, and it says, "I think Masema is going crazy," Perrin said. Min sniffed. "With him, how can you tell?" Moiraine rounded on him, a tightness to her mouth. Her voice was soft, too soft. "Is Masema the most important thing in your mind this morning, Perrin Aybara?" "No. I'd like to know when Rand left and why. Did anyone see him go? Does anyone know where he went?" He made himself meet her look with one just as level and firm. It was not easy. He loomed over her, but she was Aes Sedai. "Is this of your making, Moiraine? Did you rein him in until he was so impatient he'd go anywhere, do anything just to stop sitting still?" Loyal's ears went stiff, and he motioned a surreptitious warning with one thick-fingered hand. Moiraine studied Perrin with her head tilted to one side, and it was all he could do not to drop his eyes. "This is none of my doing," she said. "He left sometime during the night. When and how and why I yet hope to learn." Loyal's shoulders heaved in a quiet sigh of relief. Quiet for an Ogier, it sounded like steam rushing out from quenching red-hot iron. "Never anger an Aes Sedai," he said in a whisper, obviously meant just for himself, but audible to everyone. "Better to embrace the sun than to anger an Aes Sedai." Min reached up enough to hand Perrin a folded piece of paper. "Loyal went to see him after we got him to bed last night, and Rand asked to borrow pen and paper and ink." The Ogier's ears jerked, and he frowned worriedly until his long eyebrows hung down on his cheeks. "I did not know what he was planning. I didn't." "We know that," Min said. "No one is accusing you of anything, Loyal." Moiraine frowned at the paper, but she did not try to stop Perrin from reading. It was in Rand's hand. "What I do because there is no other way. He is hunting me again, and this time one of us has to die, I think. There is no need for those around me to die also. Too many have died for me already. I do not want to die either, and will not if I can manage it. There are lies in dreams and death, but dreams hold truth too." That was all, with no signature. There was no need for Perrin to wonder who Rand meant by he. For Rand, for all of them, there could be only one. Balsamon. He left that tucked under the door there, Min said in a tight voice. He took some old clothes the Shinerans had hanging out to dry, and his flute and a horse. Nothing else but a little food as far as we can tell. None of the guards saw him go, and last night they would have seen a mouse creeping. And would it have done any good if they had? Moiraine said calmly. Would any of them have stopped the Lord Dragon, or even challenged him? Some of them, Massima for one, would slit their own throats if the Lord Dragon told them to. It was Perrin's turn to study her. Did you expect anything else? They swore to follow him. Light, Moiraine. He'd never have named himself Dragon if not for you. What did you expect of them? She did not speak, and he went on more quietly. Do you believe, Moiraine, that he's really the Dragon Reborn? Or do you think he's just someone you can use before the One Power kills him or drives him mad? Go easy, Perrin, Loyal said. Not so angry. I'll go easy when she answers me. Well, Moiraine? He is what he is, she said sharply. You said the pattern would force him to the right path eventually. Is that what this is, or is he just trying to get away from you? For a moment he thought he had gone too far. Her dark eyes sparkled with anger, but he refused to back down. Well? Moiraine took a deep breath. This may well be what the pattern has chosen, yet I did not mean for him to go off alone. For all his power, he is as defenseless as a babe in many ways, and is ignorant of the world. He channels, but he has no control over whether or not the One Power comes when he reaches for it, and almost as little over what he does with it if it does come. The power itself will kill him before he has a chance to go mad if he does not learn that control. There is so much he must learn yet. He wants to run before he has learned to walk. You split hairs and lay false trails, Moiraine, Perrin snorted. If he is what you say he is, did it never occur to you that he might know what he has to do better than you? So here Perrin is not just being a mouthy asshole. She kind of tilts her head to the side and looks at him like, wait, who are you and what did you do with the quiet, polite one? But Perrin's not just being mouthy or sassy, he is flat out calling her out. He's like, that's bullshit. Here are the reasons why. He's chastising her from a place of anger, and it's a more poignant and adult dressing down than anyone but another Aes Sedai or maybe an Aiel Wise One might give her. You know, maybe you pushed him too far. Maybe you fucked up. Did it ever occur to you that this might be what the pattern wants him to do? And also pushing back at her presumption to complain that the Shinerans would be so incredibly obedient to Rand. He's like, what the fuck did you expect? These people swore fealty to him. What did you think would happen with that? Just in her face with, what did you expect? Here's your bullshit. So while it's like Perrin took Rand's place as the one standing up to Moiraine, his standing up to her is much more mature and much more cutting and pointed. It's not just, I want to do this, I'm the dragon, I want to do this, we need to be doing this thing, and being told, no, we shouldn't do this, and this is why. This is being called out and told, here are your failings, you're wrong, what did you expect? We're all kind of fucking fed up with you. Here Moiraine is being very much pushed back against and denied and opposed and told no in ways that are reasonable and logical and very adult. It's not even a power struggle. It's not a power struggle so much as just being unrestrainedly called on bullshit. It's like he looks like a sarcastic asshole because it's turned up to 11 since he's been holding it in for a while, but it's completely reasonable what he's saying to her. This book is a bridge for people in personality and character growth. It's a bridge for Egwene before she goes to the Aiel. It's a bridge for Mat before he goes through the Redstone doorways. And it's a bridge for Perrin before he goes home to the Two Rivers, discovers that his family has died, and sort of embraces the wolves and becomes Lord Perrin. So it's a book where Perrin is growing formidable. And here is Perrin for the first time putting an Aes Sedai in her place. And while right now he's more of an unwilling conscript fighting back instead of a leader laying out boundaries, the fundamental implacability is there. Chapter 7 of The Dragon Reborn is called The Way Out of the Mountains. It's a short chapter, and I've heard more than one person deride it as utterly pointless. But if you look at it, it actually shows in a really utilitarian kind of world-building travel chapter some interesting stuff in the way of relationships, characterization, and plot. It shows a bit of the dynamic between Lan and Moiraine, which I'll explore later on, At some point I'll discuss Lon and Moiraine's relationship, probably after I go through New Spring. It shows some good characterization of Moiraine in the sense that it shows her coping with stress much better at this beginning part of her journey than she will be by the time she gets to Tyr. She's being playful and prankish, and she has a bit of fun with both Perrin and Loial. She teases Lon, even if she's kind of a dick about it. She's in much better spirits than she will be later on. Most importantly, though, Chapter 7 shows Moiraine working to reassert control over Perrin. She's through with his bullshit, and since she can't send him to the brig for insubordination, like if he had actually signed a contract and she were officially his commanding officer, she has to resort to other methods. So, 3 nights into their journey sees Perrin and Loial fishing. They're catching trout with their hands, noodling fish, I believe it's called. And Moiraine comes to check it out, and she catches a fish really easily, presumably using air to make a net or a weir to catch fish. And so she's like, I'll just keep fishing here, and Perrin and Loial go further on down the creek, and it says, Moiraine gave a shout. 3 should be enough, I think. The last 2 are bigger than the first. Perrin gave Loial a startled look. She can't have. The Ogier straightened, sending the small trout scattering. She is Aes Sedai, he said simply. Sure enough, when they returned to Moiraine, 3 big trout lay on the bank. She was already buttoning her sleeves up again. Perrin thought about reminding her that whoever took the fish was supposed to clean them too, but just at that moment she caught his eye. There was no particular expression on her smooth face, but her dark eyes did not waver, and they appeared to know what he was going to say and to have dismissed it out of hand already. When she turned away, it seemed somehow too late to say anything. Muttering to himself, Perrin pulled out his belt knife and set to the gutting and heading. All of a sudden she's forgotten about sharing the chores, it seems. I suppose she'll want us to do the cooking as well and the cleaning up after. No doubt she will, Loial said without pausing over the fish he was working on. She is Aes Sedai. I seem to remember hearing that somewhere. Perrin's knife ripped into the fish. The Shinerans might have been willing to run around fetching and carrying for her, but there are only 4 of us now. We should keep on turn and turn about. It's only fair. Loial gave a great snort of laughter. I doubt she sees it that way. First she had to put up with Rand arguing with her all the time, and now you're ready to take over for him? As a rule, Aes Sedai do not let anyone argue with them. I expect she means to have us back in the habit of doing what she says by the time we reach the first village. A good habit to be in, Lon said, throwing back his cloak. In the fading light he had appeared out of nowhere. Perrin nearly fell over from surprise, and Loial's ears went stiff with shock. Neither of them had heard the warder's step. A habit you should never have lost, Lon added, then strode off toward Moiraine and the horses. His boots barely made a sound even on that rocky ground, and once he was a few paces away, the cloak hanging down his back gave him the uneasy appearance of a disembodied head and arms drifting up from the stream. We need her to find Rand, Perrin said softly, but I am not going to let her shape my life any more. He went back to his cleaning vigorously. He meant to keep that promise, he really did. But during the days that followed, in some way he did not quite understand, he found that he and Loial were doing the cooking and the cleaning up and any other little chore that Moiraine thought of. He even discovered that somehow or other he had taken over tending Aldib every night, unsaddling the mare and rubbing her down while Moiraine settled herself, apparently deep in thought. Loial gave in to it as inevitable, but not Perrin. He tried refusing, resisting, but it was hard to resist when she made a reasonable suggestion, and a small one at that. Only there was always another suggestion behind it, as reasonable and small as the first, and then another. The simple force of her presence, the strength of her gaze, made it difficult to protest. Her dark eyes would catch his at the moment he opened his mouth. A lift of her eyebrow to suggest he was being rude, a surprised widening of her eyes that he could object to so small a request, a level stare that held in it everything that was Aes Sedai. All these things could make him hesitate, and once he hesitated there was never any recovering lost ground. He accused her of using the one power on him, though he did not really think that was it, and she told him not to be a fool. He began to feel like a piece of iron trying to stop a smith from hammering it into a scythe. So, this is pretty cool in the sense that I'm assuming that there was a bit of headbutting or her getting him to do little chores in the 3 days between when they left camp to chase after Rand and the fishing. But then she uses the one power to effortlessly catch 3 fish, when Perrin and Loial have been putting a great deal of time and effort into their noodling, which is a skill and takes patience. And I don't have the patience for fishing of any kind, so it's a good thing that I don't like fish. but she shows off with a demonstration of the one power to effortlessly catch these big fat fish. She caught the biggest fish, and she caught them really fast. So it's a subtle way to show off her power and reinforce her authority, and then basically blow on her finger gun and walk back to camp and leave them to take care of the fish. And this works in the sense that Perrin and Loial are the camp boys for the rest of the journey, but it doesn't fix Perrin's attitude. Perrin feels like he can't say no because he's too polite. He's not like Mat. Mat would have just laughed at her and said no. His fundamental makeup is one of both insolence and indolence. He hates work, and he's not particularly concerned about appearances or being polite, so Mat would have said no to doing any of her chores with sarcasm and a grin. But Perrin is polite, too concerned about being judged, and also undermined by Loial, who gives into it as being inevitable. Loial is also polite, and he's just not as troubled by it, partly because he defers to the presumed wisdom of an Aes Sedai. There's a general attitude among Ogier about young people and how they defer to elders and those who are wiser or in positions of greater authority. And so Loial has an inherent deferential nature as a teenage Ogier, whereas Perrin is more and more seeing himself as Moiraine's equal, or he's going through this transitional stage where he is fighting against her and pushing against her and making his own choices because he does not recognize her right to shape his life. She doesn't get to tell him what to do. He's not a fucking camp boy. And that intent and determination is kind of what gets him to the point of being able to, once he goes through the horrible emotional meat grinder of Book 4, just not give a fuck anymore and tell Aes Sedai no. But he's super resentful in the meantime. And the thing that Perrin resents the most about Moiraine is the secrets that she keeps. He fucking hates it. And RJ uses Chapter 7, The Way Out of the Mountains, to lay the groundwork for Perrin's retaliatory tit-for-tat when it comes to secret-keeping throughout this book. We've already seen that he's really pissed to not get a daily briefing for potential fuckery. We've seen him be frustrated that he doesn't know exactly what they're waiting for in the mountains. We had a foundation made in the first chapter for Perrin's frustration with Moraine's lack of forthrightness and general unwillingness to part with information. So RJ gives us a short bit in this chapter where Moiraine is honestly being a dick and teasing Lan about Mirelle and giving him some shit about the fact that she has arranged it so that his bond will pass if she dies with no okay from him ahead of time. And Perrin asks who Mirelle is, and it says, Moiraine gave an amused, secretive smile. Just a green sister, someone to whom Lan must one day deliver a package for safekeeping. No day soon, Lan said, and surprisingly there was open anger in his voice. Never, if I can help it. You will outlive me long, Moiraine Aes Sedai. She has too many secrets, Perrin thought, but asked no more about a subject that could crack the warder's iron self-control. The Aes Sedai had a blanket-wrapped bundle tied behind her saddle, the dragon banner. Perrin was uneasy about having it with them, but Moiraine had neither asked his opinion nor listened when he offered it. Not that anyone was likely to recognize it if he saw it, yet he hoped she was as good at keeping secrets from other people as she was at keeping them from him. Perrin, who is such a reluctant conscript, no longer accepts Moraine's authority, so he resents having secrets kept from him. It's information he feels that he is entitled to because he has a much more cooperative view of their team, like we're all in this together, so I deserve intel, I want information, I want to know what I'm getting into, and so he questions her. And because she's not being free with information, he seeks out his own intel in Jara, no matter that they tell him to keep his mouth shut, because he refuses to be denied. And it's absolutely true that if Moiraine just asked around about Rand rather than reading the signs of Yoa to Viren was here, she would have shared none of what she learned with Perrin. For the travel chapters while they're following Rand, we only see them in Jara, and then we just get descriptions of the towns between Jara and Remen. And we hear that this town burned down, that town found gold, the wells are flowing again in this town, everybody got into arguments and 3 people died in that town. But we don't hear about whether Perrin asked questions even if he got told to be quiet. But I'm guessing that he did, even if he was more discreet about it. He's gotten to the point that he's not depending upon Moiraine to throw out whatever nuggets that she will. He's going to make his own inquiries. He is pissed at her, and he knows that she's not going to give him info, and so he also holds info back from her. They have to leave Remen in the night because Perrin and Gaul kill all the White Cloaks. So they're on the boat, and Perrin has a dream where he enters Teleron Riyadh and Hopper takes him to look at Lanfear and Ishamael. And then the dream changes and he comes across to Rand, and Rand is killing a whole bunch of shadow spawn, and Perrin is trying to help and is like, look out, and he accidentally mildly zorches Perrin with lightning or whatever so that he gets this burn mark on his chest. And so Perrin decides that this time, because he's seen the Forsaken, it's probably something that he should actually talk to Moiraine about. So he goes and finds her on the ship, and it says, I had a dream, he told her, and proceeded to tell her of it, all of it. He even pulled up his shirt to show her the small circle on his chest, red with wavy red lines radiating from it. He had kept things from her before, and he suspected he would again, but this might be too important to hold back. The pin was the smallest part of a pair of scissors and the easiest made, but without it the scissors cut no cloth. When he was done, he stood there waiting. She had watched him without expression, except that those dark eyes had examined every word as it came out of his mouth, waited, measured it, held it up to the light. Now she sat the same way, only it was he who was examined, weighed, and held up to the light. Well, is it important? He demanded finally. I think it was one of those wolf dreams you told me about. I'm sure it was. It must have been. But that doesn't make what I saw real. Only you said maybe some of the Forsaken are free, and he called her Lanfear, and is it important, or am I standing here making a fool out of myself? And a little bit further, he says, does it mean the Forsaken are loose? I told you before that they might be. Some of them. Your dreams are nothing I expected, Perrin. Dreamers have written of wolves, but I did not expect this. Well, I think it was real. I think I saw something that really happened, something I wasn't supposed to see. What you must see. I think Lanfear is loose at the very least. What are you going to do? I am going to Ilion, and then I will go to Tyr and hope to reach it before Rand. We had need to leave Remen too quickly for Lon to learn whether he crossed the river or went down it. We should know before we reach Ilion, though. We will find sign if he has gone this way. She glanced at her book as if she wanted to resume her reading. Is that all you were going to do? With Lanfear loose and the light alone knows how many of the others? Do not question me, she said coldly. You do not know which questions to ask, and you would comprehend less than half the answers if I gave them, which I will not. He shifted his feet under her gaze until it became clear she would say no more on the matter. His shirt rubbed painfully at the burn on his chest. It did not seem a bad hurt. Not for being struck by lightning, it doesn't. But how he had come by it was another matter. Will you heal this? Are you no longer uneasy about the one power being used on you then, Perrin? No, I will not heal it. It is not serious, and it will remind you of the need to be careful. Careful about pressing her, he knew, as well as about dreams or letting others know of them. If there is nothing else, Perrin. He started for the door, then stopped. There is one thing. If you knew a woman's name was Zareen, would you think it meant anything about her? Why under the light do you ask this question? A girl, he said awkwardly. A young woman. I met her last night. She's one of the other passengers. He would let her discover for herself that Zareen knew she was Aes Sedai, and seemed to think following them would lead her to the Horn of Valir. He would not keep back anything he thought was important, but if Moiraine could be secretive, so could he. There's this point-counterpoint of fuck yous between allies here, but dealing with her frustrating leadership, for Perrin, he learns a lot about how he wants to proceed when faced with a chance to impart information to subordinates once he's in a position of leadership. He tells everyone when they travel to Gyeldon to get Alejandra and to deal with Massima, hey, guess what? We're in Gyeldon. He lets Gaul loose, and he's like, yo, he who comes with the dawn is on his way to Tyr. He tells people things. He's straightforward and upfront, and so he's punishing her for not giving him information. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to tell her that Zareen knows that she's Aes Sedai. Fuck her. And perhaps Moiraine is also punishing Perrin for robbing her of the right to decide for them the proper course of action. She was waiting for Lon to get back from scouting because she wanted to make a measured, thought-out choice about how to leave Remen. Should we go cross-country? Should we take a ship? But instead, Perrin's choices forced her to leave chaos behind in the night. And I don't know if she's angry with him or not about that, She doesn't seem particularly upset. There's no mention of a pointed glance or anything, so maybe she's kind of like, well, the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, or she's sitting on the ship thinking maybe the pattern used Taviran to make my choice for me. But she's such a control freak that I can see her being really pissed off at Perrin, so I don't know. But I think this relationship between the two of them would be less contentious if Moiraine were not so frustrated and desperate by the time that they've reached Ilion. Her stress by the time they get there is at a fever pitch. She goes from being a stately Aes Sedai with all of the vaunted coolness to somebody whose nerves are taut, to tangentially saying scary things like when they're in Remen and the innkeeper mentions proclaiming the dragon in Ghealdan, and she's like, is there a false dragon in Ghealdan? And she basically frightens the innkeeper once they realize that no, it's Masema talking about the beast will fight for the dragon and everything. She basically more or less says, I'm going to fucking kill Masema. But she doesn't directly threaten the innkeeper. And then she moves on to the point where she starts directly terrorizing people when they reach Ilion. And partly I think it's because Faile has attached herself to them at that point, and Perrin's behavior shows that his loyalties are shifting. And add to that stressor the fact that Perrin has punished Moiraine with a bit of tit for tat when it comes to secret keeping, and that gets revealed. It says, Moiraine had been neither pleased nor displeased to discover that Zareen, I'll not call her Faile, whatever she wants to name herself, she is no falcon, knew she was Aes Sedai, though she had been perhaps a little upset with him for not telling her. A little upset. She called me a fool, but that was all. Then, Moiraine did not seem to care one way or another about Zareen being a hunter of the Horn. But once she learned the girl thought they would lead her to the Horn of Valyr, once she learned he had known that too and not told her, Zareen had been more than forthcoming about both subjects with Moiraine to his mind. Then her cold dark stare had taken on a quality that made him feel as if he had been packed in a barrel of snow in the dead of winter. The Aes Sedai said nothing, but she stared too often and too hard for any comfort. And a little bit later it says, Zareen met each Aes Sedai look with a smile, but every time Moiraine turned away she swallowed and wiped her forehead. Perrin rather admired her for managing that smile when Moiraine was watching. It was a good deal more than he could do. He had never seen the Aes Sedai truly lose her temper, but he himself was at the point of wishing she would shout or rage or anything but stare at him. Light, maybe not anything. Maybe the stare was bearable. Moiraine is so done with everybody's bullshit, and it feels like she's contemplating Perrin with this measuring gaze, asking herself if it's even worth it to deal with him now that he has come to this place. Because she tried really, really hard to get Faile to fuck off. She learns on the ship that Faile knows that she's Aes Sedai, and I don't know if she learned that before or after Perrin and Faile have the screaming argument where Aes Sedai is mentioned loudly enough that everybody on the ship finds out that Moiraine is Aes Sedai. But regardless, she discovers, oh, this girl is actually planning on becoming one of our party. She's attached to us, not like a falcon, more like a leech, because she thinks we're going to lead her to the Horn of Valyr, and Perrin did not tell me that. How long was he going to wait to tell me if Faile hadn't decided to just flap her mouth about it? I think Perrin's behavior is definitely one of the things that is pushing the bounds of Moraine's serenity. So, once they get to Ilion, Moraine's basically like, yo, Zareen, you need to fuck off, we're done here. And Faile just won't go away, no matter how hard Moiraine tries, no matter how scary she acts. So Moiraine binds her with her hunter's oath, and then it says, it seems you have found Min's falcon, Ta'Veren. I have tried to discourage her, but it appears she will perch on your shoulder whatever I do. The pattern weaves a future for you, it seems, yet remember this, if I must, I will snip your thread from the pattern, and if the girl endangers what must be, you will share her fate. So, the wording of this could be better, because it's kind of ambiguous about whose thread is getting snipped from the pattern. I feel like it would be better if it said, she looked at Zareen and said the pattern weaves a future for you, but remember this, I'll snip your thread. And then she looked at Perrin and said, if the girl endangers what must be, because I'm assuming that that's what she's doing, is she's speaking to both Perrin and Faile in this paragraph. Regardless, Moiraine is at the point of threatening her traveling companions with death if they get in the way of her mission, and she's referred to that obliquely before, but now she's saying it straight out. And Perrin thinks it's bullshit that he's being saddled with this responsibility when it wasn't anything to do with a choice that he made. He's kind of like, what the fuck? I didn't ask for her to be here. I was minding my own business when she came and jumped on the ship. I didn't want her around. Why should I have to pay the price for her bullshit? Later that night, when they're in easing the badger, Perrin is attacked by the Grey Men, and Moiraine decides that she has to go out and scout Ilion, and she can't take Lon with her, because she's like, some things are just too dangerous for you. And Lon argues with her about it, and it says, "Heed me, Lon. Should I fail, you will know it, and you will be compelled to return to the White Tower. I would not change that, even if I had time. I do not mean you to die in a vain attempt to avenge me. Take Perrin with you. It seems the shadow has made his importance in the pattern known to me, if not clear. I was a fool. Rand is so strongly Taviran that I ignored what it must mean that he had two others close by him. With Perrin and Mat, the Amerlin may still be able to affect the course of events. With Rand loose, she will have to. Tell her what has happened, my guiding." "You speak as if you were already dead," Lon said roughly. "The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, and the shadow darkens the world. Heed me, Lon, and obey as you swore to." With that, she was gone. So Moiraine goes out scouting, and she somehow manages to learn that Samael is ruling in Ilion. In the meantime, Perrin, Lon, and Loyal go look outside the inn, and they find the Darkhound's footprints, which makes Lon decide that Moraine's previous orders no longer stand, so he goes after her. When they come back with the news that one of the Forsaken is ruling in Ilion, Moiraine seems a little bit keyed up. She's holding on to her serenity, but barely. And once again, Perrin is annoying her with a ton of questions. She tells him to gather all his shit and get ready to leave. We need to get the fuck out of here now. Samael is ruling in Ilion and we gotta go before he discovers us. And Perrin's like, yo, he already knows where I am. He sent those Grey Men after me. And Moiraine insists that Samael did not send the Grey Men. She doesn't know that Ashamael was the one who sent them, but she's pretty sure that Samael doesn't know Perrin exists yet. It says, "I do not understand," Perrin said. "I seem to be saying that a great deal, and I'm tired of it. I want some answers I can't understand." He pulled himself the rest of the way up so Moiraine would not be looking down at him. She had enough advantage without that. If he did not send the Grey Men, who did? If a Myrddraal or another Forsaken? He stopped to swallow. Another Forsaken? Light. If somebody else sent them, why did they not tell him? They're all dark friends, aren't they? And why me, Moiraine? Why me? Rand is the bloody Dragon Reborn. He heard the gasps from Zareen and Nieda, and only then realized what he had said. Moraine's stare seemed to skin him like the sharpest steel. Hasty, bloody tongue. When did I stop thinking before I speak? It seemed to him it had happened when he first felt Zareen's eyes watching him. She was watching him now, with her mouth hanging open. "You are sealed to us now," Moiraine told the bold-faced woman. "There is no turning back for you, ever." Zareen looked as if she wanted to say something and was afraid to, but the Aes Sedai had already turned her attention elsewhere. "Nieda, flee Ilion tonight, in this hour, and hold your tongue even better than you have held it all these years. There are those who would cut it out for what you could say before I could even find you." Her hard tone left doubts as to exactly how she meant that, and Nieda nodded vigorously as if she had heard it both ways. "As for you, Perrin," the white mare moved closer, and he leaned back from the Aes Sedai despite all he could do. "There are many threads woven in the pattern, and some are as black as the shadow itself. Take care one of them does not strangle you." Her heels touched Aldeep's flanks, and the mare darted into the rain, Mandarb following close behind. "Burn you, Moiraine," Perrin thought as he rode after them. "Sometimes I do not know which side you were on." Moiraine has no more patience and very little serenity left, and in this moment of exasperation with Perrin, she threatens like 3 people, and it is not like her to terrorize other people. She's actually a pretty nice person for the most part, despite everything. She is not that type of Aes Sedai. We see plenty of Aes Sedai who are shitty to people and frighten other people, even Aes Sedai who are not dark friends, and Moiraine is just not that type. But she terrorizes Fail, which I don't feel bad for, so fuck her. She tries to terrorize Perrin, she terrorizes her agent, and when you look at her, she is not holding to Aes Sedai's serenity, and Perrin is over it. He's so over all of it, and he's just like, you know what, Moiraine? Fuck you. Fuck you. And once they're in Tyr, Moiraine reaches the point where she has nothing left but her job that she has to do. She has no more emotional energy to give anyone or anything else. It's like, we're here for Rand. We have to do this job. We have to make sure the Forsaken don't kill him. We can't let him die trying to get Kalandor. Nothing else matters. And so when the Black Aja leave the spirit hedgehog Tirangriel in the private dining room as a trap for her, and Fail triggers it, Moiraine has Lon bring up the innkeeper, and she terrorizes him too. When Lon returned, shoving a frightened Jurahara ahead of him by the scruff of his fat neck, the Aes Sedai rounded on the balding man. "You promised to keep this room for me, Master Harrett." Her voice was as hard, as precise as a skinning knife. "To allow not even a serving woman to enter to clean unless I was present. Who did you let enter it, Master Harrett? Tell me." Harrett shook like a bowl of pudding. "Only the 2 ladies, mistress. They wished to leave a surprise for you. I swear, mistress, they showed it to me. A little hedgehog. They said you would be surprised." "I was surprised, innkeeper," she said softly. "Leave me, and if you whisper a word of this, even in your sleep, I will pull this inn down and leave only a hole in the ground." "Yes, mistress," he whispered. "I swear it. I do swear. Go." So, he's a shithead and didn't follow her instructions, but I'm guessing that Liandrin probably used her compulsion trick on him. But Moiraine doesn't consider that, or doesn't really care, and just takes it upon herself to frighten yet another innkeeper, because at this point she's about as far from serenity as an Aes Sedai can get. And in her mind, Faile is fucked. She's fucked, and she's unimportant. Her falling into the trap changes nothing about the plan. Perrin and Loial still have to go to Tar Valon, and Lon and Moiraine are like, well, this could actually be advantageous, because if he felt it trigger, then Baela won't expect us to be coming. Which infuriates Perrin, but what precedes Faile running upstairs and getting caught by the hedgehog is Moiraine returning to the inn and telling them, Rand is in Tyr, Baelal is ruling, and all of you need to go to Tar Valon because it's safer. And Perrin feels let down by that. He makes a comment about, I bet Loial will have a lot to say about the fact that we ran away, and he's kind of pissed about it. And so Moiraine doesn't really care that Faile has been caught in this trap. And she doesn't have any way to fix it, and so she figures, okay, well, she's in hibernation mode, but it's probably going to kill her, and I don't have time for it anyway. It's not like Faile did anything to endear herself or make Moiraine have any emotional investment in her well-being, but even if she had, that's not the mission. That's not what's important. And so she tells Perrin, you've got to go. It's time to go. But Perrin will not leave Faile. He peered into the room and wanted to cry. Zareen looks so small lying there, so helpless. Faile, I swear I will only call you Faile ever again. Why don't you do something? The trap has been sprung, Perrin, but it is a trap that will still catch anyone who steps into that room. I would not reach her side before it took me, and I have work I must do tonight. Burn, you Aes Sedai, burn your work. This world of dreams, is it like the wolf dreams? You said these dreamers sometimes saw wolves. I have told you what I can, she said sharply. It is time for you to go. Lana and I must be on our way to the stone. There can be no waiting now. No. He said it quietly, but when Moiraine opened her mouth, he raised his voice. No, I will not leave her. The Aes Sedai took a deep breath. Very well, Perrin. Her voice was ice, calm, smooth, cold. Remain if you wish. Perhaps you will survive this night. Lon. And that is one of the most soldierly things that Moiraine does. She gives up on him, and in doing so she regains her serenity. She washes her hands of him and walks away to pursue her main mission, which is to make sure that Rand survives this night. She's like, I did what I could for Perrin. I was going to get him on a riverboat up to Tar Valon so that he would live through this, and so that he could be up there with Mat, so the Amyrlin could have him and Mat to affect events in the world. But she's like, okay, I can't fight with him anymore. This young blacksmith is dutiful, but only on his terms, and nothing that I can say is going to change that, and I don't have time for it. She has this ta'veren here with this iron will and the power of nope, and he told her no. And she has more important shit to do than delude herself that she can sway him. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Podcast of the Dragon. This is my penultimate episode for the Dragon Reborn. I'll be back for one more, and then I will be doing another hiatus while I read The Shadow Rising and take notes for multiple episodes. I found that the quality of the content that I put out for Book 3 was really a cut above the rest thanks to doing it that way, and I will use my time off to learn a thing or two about video editing so I can finally get that YouTube thing going. You can find me on Twitter at WarderGray, that's Gray with an E. All of my links are down in the show notes. There's a link for email, Discord, for the Watt Trivia and Games Discord if you want to go play fun games, and for the Watt Fandom and Calendar Discord if you want to find more content. There's a link to my Patreon if you'd like to support the show. I'd really appreciate it, and it'll get you access to some cool bonus content. There's also a link to Apple Podcasts. If you could go and rate and review me, that would be amazing. If you know anyone who likes The Wheel of Time and might want to listen to a different kind of podcast, please tell them about me. My music is by Kevin MacLeod. I'm the Grey Warder, and unlike Moiraine, I don't take out my frustrations on hotel employees by threatening them with death and ruin because they don't get paid enough to put up with my bullshit. Before I start the show, I was just going to give a quick shout out to my newest patron, David. David is my new Night Spear, and I just want to give thanks and appreciation. Thank you very much, David.